This situation is getting bigger minute after minute. People across Caribbean and Africa have been reacting to this thing very strongly. Jamaicans and Africans are now talking the same thing. This after the UK trying to ban the African visas. So this thing, it is not a good thing. So we need to say no, and kindly please thank you for you who have been subscribing and following about this channel, and dive in as we continue watching this video. Thank you.
Well, you have said that you want to block visas for nations that ask for slavery reparations.
Yeah.
You're basically saying you won't give visas then to huge swathes of the Caribbean and Africa. Let's just list the countries that have asked for slavery reparations: Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, Antigua, Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad, Tobago, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, the list goes on. You think that's a feasible and operative plan?
If they continue to make...
Let's talk about the audacity. Africa holds the power. Africa holds the resources. Africa holds the future. And if you didn't know, now you know.
We will not fall for the bait. And you can threaten us all you want, intimidate us all you want, but we will stay focused.
Fair.
If they can make... Well, being thwarted by lawfare. Here's another thing people really need to understand. I think people watching GB News do understand this. His Majesty's Parliament is sovereign. This notion that, a minister will sit there and a prime minister will sit there and just get overruled by courts. If we pass primary legislation to ensure those things happen, it will happen. You can mark my words on that. And do we again, it
so
was,
you're quite
you look
happy
at the last 20 years,
people coming from the Caribbean or Africa, say for instance if they have relatives here, you're going to say you just can't come because your country, even if you don't personally support it, supports slavery reparations.
I think you're making the exact argument about why there are outrageous demands that people watching this program should pay them reparations.
It's outrageous to demand slavery reparations, but people might equally think that it might be used as a sledgehammer.
Well, then if it's outrageous, it's about time Britain... Do you not agree, Camilla? It's about time Britain grew a backbone. And what we're saying is, if Nigel Farage is our Prime Minister, we're not going to allow Britain to be slapped around on the world stage. By the way, number one, Keir Starmer abstained outrageously in the UN vote about this matter. Number two, over the last 20 years, and again, the Tories are in power for the majority of that, those countries you just listed who are demanding reparations, we granted those countries millions of visas and issued them £6 billion, billion with a B in foreign aid. We've had enough of British people being taken advantage of.
Some of the people that come from the Caribbean and Africa have made their lives here and are paying taxes and are embracing British values, aren't they?
In which case, they are almost certainly British citizens.
Let's talk about the audacity. The UK's Reform Party just threatened to ban visas for Ghana and 16 other African and Caribbean nations, all because they asked for reparations for the transatlantic slave trade. 7 European countries, including the UK, enslaved and trafficked more than 15 million Africans across the Atlantic. And that stolen labor built Western wealth. Now they want to punish the descendants for asking to be repaid. Last month, the UN declared that the transatlantic slave trade was the gravest crime against humanity, and they called for reparations. The UK abstained. Then they told Africa that the bank is closed. But they don't want you to think about this. 101 companies on the London Stock Exchange control $1.3 trillion in African resources. And that's just in oil, coal, platinum, gold, and diamonds. The UK extracts $116 billion more from Africa every year than it returns in aid. Britain is South Africa's single largest international investor, with more than $65 billion invested. A recent UK-Nigeria trade deal alone was worth about $1 billion. Now, they need Africa's land. They need Africa's resources and Africa's labor and Africa's markets. If African nations banned British executives and investors the way Reform wants to ban African people, Britain would feel it immediately. You see, Africa is demanding justice. When Britain abolished slavery in 1833, they paid $25 billion in today's money, not to the enslaved, to the enslavers. The African people got nothing, and now their descendants are called an ethnic grievance. This is not policy. This is white supremacy with a parliamentary stamp. The refusal to repair is the continuation of the original sin. Africa holds the power. Africa holds the resources. Africa holds the future. And if you didn't know, now you know.
Recently, there was a political party in a country I won't mention threatening us that if we continue with this campaign, we run the risk of being banned from entering their country. They will impose visa bans. You will have observed that there was a conscious effort on our part to ignore the provocation. There are those who want to make this moment confrontational, who want to sow the seeds of division and discord, and to engage in actions that agents provocateurs engage in. We will not fall for the bait. And you can threaten us all you want, intimidate us all you want, but we will stay focused and we will only engage those who are willing to partner with.
This is the reason why. Because Jamaica is pushing for reparations, the UK, the party that is currently in the opposition, say anytime them come in power, them are gonna make sure that Jamaica get banned. Because Jamaica is one of the countries that have always lobbied for reparations. You see Dr. Ali from Donga, Guyana, I remember him go on one interview with one of the man them, and as soon as him get the opportunity, him tell him, say, look here, no one never have a problem for benefit from slavery. The whole I want to sit down up there in the White Houses and all of those places well comfortable benefiting from slaves, but yet still when it come time for to pay back black people, everybody hush hush and everybody broke. There was a black person who came in my comments and asked, why is it that we should be reparated when we're not slaves? Why is it that they reparated people who never owned slaves back in 2015? Why would they do such a thing? Everybody had the money to pay the descendants of slave owners, but when it come time for we get little shillings, everybody have a problem. There are plantations in this country that are still owned by the descendants of slave owners. Plantations that mine and your ancestors build, them can block we from every country in this world. I don't care. Wow, with reparations. That's how we are defend. That's how me are telling you, so on the need for remain focus. All of this, on willing. Black people are a set of people. Black people remind me of Jacob and Esau. Esau was willing to give away his birthright for a little food. We out here were willing to give away everything, every single thing for one little visa.
Reform consultants here, Yusuf. I don't actually know what his former job is. He's had several jobs. He's also said he left the party, then he came back to the party, but that's not important. He says he will block the visa from any countries that are attempting to demand slavery reparations from the UK. What's really interesting is right, this conversation comes up every year because of Independence Day, and every country around the world has understood the illegal pillaging of their resources and their people over a very long period of time, where people were resources at the time. But they've noticed what that trend was. They've noticed the value that it's been to these new countries. They've observed the treatment of the countries that stole, took and pillaged the host country, and now they want some form of repair. Now what's really interesting is I just think that Britain mismanaged the Commonwealth incredibly. By the way, if you get to the point where you have leadership and ownership of all these different colonies, and maybe you cannot afford to maintain them after the Second World War because you've used all your money, but the strategic alliance you could have gone into for resources would have been astronomical if it was managed properly, but it hasn't been. Anyway, the greater point is that acting as a support network for these countries in the global stage would have meant that all of these countries would have had education, they would have had infrastructure, they would have had a share of their own resources, and Britain would still be profiting from the global. And I'm pretty sure some of these countries would take that benefit. Some of the citizens will definitely take that benefit back today because they're unhappy with how their countries are run as I think third world is a outdated term, but a oppressed nation on a global scale. Antigua and Barbuda, which is my host country, Jamaica as well, but Antigua and Barbuda is where my grandparents are from. Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Ghana, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, Kenya, Montserrat, Nigeria, St. Kitts, St. Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent Grenadines, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. Basically, all the cool countries, all the vibrant countries, all the best countries for food, dance, music, culture, and people, they're going to try and ban. Well, I think the first thing that they should do is threaten to ban them back, because this idea that Britain believes that it can export itself into any country that it wants with all this privilege while denouncing and diminishing the returns of everybody else is nonsense. So I would immediately threaten the exact same thing back to them. But more importantly, Britain needs these countries more than it realizes. This is half of your football teams there and more. So continue with your empty threats. And Zaya Youssef, you charlatan, we're bored of you.
The UK is threatening Jamaica for demanding reparations. On April 7, 2026, a UK political party called Reform UK made an announcement. They want to ban visas for citizens of Jamaica, Barbados, Ghana, Nigeria, and every other nation demanding slavery reparations. Let that sink in. Britain enslaved millions of Africans, built an empire on Caribbean blood and sugar. And now when those nations ask for accountability, the response is a visa ban threat. This came 1 week after a UN General Assembly resolution on March 25th, 2026, declared the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. Britain abstained from that vote. CARICOM Chair Hilary Beckles called Reform UK's proposal toxic racism. Caribbean and African leaders condemned it as provocative. The UK government says it is not official policy, not yet, but Reform UK is currently leading polls ahead of the 2029 election. This is not new. Britain has always punished those who demanded justice. They called Sam Sharp a criminal. They called Paul Bogle a rebel. They called the Maroons terrorists. Now they are threatening visa bans. The language changes, the intention never does. Comment reparations if you believe Jamaica and the Caribbean deserve justice. Follow and
our policy is crystal clear. From this point, any country that formally makes a demand for reparations from this country, a reformed government, if we win the next general election, will immediately halt visa issuances to that country. And we've already made clear that we would end foreign aid too. Britain was the first major power to prohibit slavery, and it cost Britain thousands of sailors. Britain spent the modern equivalent of billions of pounds on enforcing that slave trade, the prohibition on slavery. So I think Britain actually deserves a lot of credit for that.
I understand that your parents emigrated to...
Now, for those of you wondering who this man is, his name is Zia Youssef, and he's the spokesperson for the Reform UK party, where they are planning that when they come to power, they will be banning the issuance of visa to all the countries that are demanding reparation, including Jamaica, Barbados, Nigeria, and then Ghana. Now, the funny thing is, his parents are also from Sri Lanka, and the foreign minister of that country is also demanding reparation. So I'm looking forward to see what will happen. Now, let's even put that one aside. He was talking about the fact that the UK played a huge role in abolition of the slave trade. One thing that they never talk about is what really led to the abolition. The resistance that was rising in Africa and the Caribbean, where there were people like the Maroons, before people like William Wilberforce came in. They never talk about the fact that after this abolition, they shifted to raw materials in Africa, how the economy once depended on their colonies, to the extent that they scrambled for Africa in the 1880s. A main thing that led to the retrogression of Africa. They don't talk about the fact that they came to recruit Africans to go and fight in a world war that they had no role in, promising them a lot of money. When they came back from the World War and they were demanding for their money, they were shot and killed in 1948. Have the families of these people been compensated? The person who did it said it on camera.
I gave the order to fire, and nothing happened. And I retreated back onto the firing party and tore a rifle out of the hands of one of the men. And I myself fired at a man in front who was urging the crowd forward. And he was killed. And I think I fired a total of another 5 shots. And the crowd turned around and made off.
A UK political party called Reform UK is proposing to ban the visas of countries who had voted for reparations for slavery. As an advocate of Jamaica and someone who is in talks and has conversations and knows people on the ground and has family in Jamaica, I would like to invite you all to a protest that's occurring on April 13th to speak out against British colonialism and to retrieve Jamaica back to the people. Now, although Jamaica claims to be an independent country, it is still very much owned by the British. The British High Court have the ability to overturn and override what the Jamaican courts say. And that's why we've seen certain people released from prison when the Jamaican government did not support that as such. Nor did many of the Jamaican people, let's just be honest. But most importantly, the British monarchy has taken advantage of the vulnerability of the people in Jamaica. They are guilty of violating the human rights of Jamaicans. And it's time for Jamaicans to stand up against them. It's time for all of us to use our voice and start speaking out. And if you are in Jamaica, then please join us on March 13 to speak out against the injustices that have been happening toward Jamaicans in Jamaica at the hands of the British monarchy. Join us on April 13 at 11 a.m. at the JDF Admiral Office. Fight with your fellow Jamaicans and stand up for what's right. This is the No British Imposter protest. If you'd like more information, please check the caption where you can give us a shout and we can support you along the way. One Jamaica.
As you have seen from the video, it is not about banning visas. Actually, it is about respect, dignity, and very many things. This controversy started after reform. UK figures suggested that countries pushing slavery reparation claims against Britain could potentially face visa restriction if they gained power. Countries like Jamaica, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, they always ask to stop asking questions about history and consequences. You know, when colonization happened, many people went through a lot. They have a lot of scars. They are bitter. So asking them about history, asking them about how it was and or how they are, actually it is very painful to them. So for many people, liberation is not about money. Most people look at it as acknowledgement, recognition, and accountability. So many Jamaicans and African onlines are saying, hold on, discussing history is now a problem. And that's why emotions are so high. It's so intense right now due to this, what UK they have started. You know, when you continue controlling, it seems someone has his or her own freedom, and it seems you want to control him in everything. It brings a lot of emotion. It brings a lot of questions. So that's why many people are very bitter concerning this thing that is happening. So this thing is not a one country issue. It is a global issue. Many people are still undergoing colonial tortures, colonial bitterness, and what they went through, or what their great fathers and mothers went through. So they know it is written, so they have the information. So trying to come up with something of the same kind, these people, they feel bitter and they feel that this is not good and they need to react concerning the same issue. So due to colonial tortures, scars, and African being mistreated, many people have got a lot of bitterness. Some of them lost their closest friends. Some of them lost properties. Others, they are still, maybe their life was better before. So the life went and slowed down automatically up to this generation, because those people who are iconic in that family were taken or were killed, and that family, from that generation up to right now, people are not okay in that family. People, maybe they were better, but right now they are very down in terms of maybe economy, in terms of sociology, or in terms of things like politically, they are very down. So UK thinks they will still control the way they used to do. Nowadays things have changed, both politically, economically, socially, mentally. Things have changed. You cannot just control people the way they used to do earlier. So things like this can create a lot of bitterness, can create a lot of boundaries. So countries must stop doing such things. Not only UK alone, but even other countries who think they are superior, they are better than others. Mistreating young countries that are trying to grow, it is something that they should stop and must stop, because it will be not easy the way they used to do. It will not be the way they have been doing. Actually, people must wake up. More so African countries and black people must say no to things that can bring us into what our forefathers went through. So thank you so much for you who have been subscribing, for those who have been following this channel. Like, share, and don't forget to comment. Thank you, and God bless you.